Flavour genre?
Of this shade, I think it's red.
I would say I've got quite a dark auburn shade.
No, I think I'm unmistakably ginger.
As a child, I was so pedantic that it really bothered me that people described my obviously orange hair as red. And so when being asked to name the colours in the colour chart, I insisted that orange was red. And for quite a long while, they thought I was colourblind, but it turned out I was just an arsehole.
People say that it's darker now, and certainly if I look at photos of myself when I was younger, it was very vibrant, it was unmistakably orange.
I would say that I'm like spicy flavoured.
And I think I've stayed kind of, I might have got slightly more magenta in it.
Weirdly, I think it's gone a bit lighter on the ends from the sun, so it's a bit coppery.
The biggest change for me has been the beard, which didn't used to be there, and my moustache used to be completely blonde, like like my eyebrows, completely invisibly blonde, and over time it has gradually filled in, and that's been the main change. So, because the very centre of my face produces only invisibly blonde hairs, but that radius is closing in, and I could have eyebrows by the end of the decade.
My name is Emma and I'm editor of Ginger Parrot. I was quite shy, particularly when I was really young, and I think once I had any sort of recollection of what colour my hair was, that's because I started getting nicknames. Before that you get parents, grandparents, parents' friends saying, oh, you've got a lovely auburn shade. Ginger wasn't really thrown around until you're later on at school, and they say to you, oh, but you're ginger. And it's, it's almost like a dirty word. I was like, well, does that mean something to be ashamed of? I love the word ginger. I definitely think there's a bit of a split camp in the redhead community or ginger community as to whether redhead or ginger is the term that they like to be used. But I think more and more people are using the word ginger, and I think that's a good thing because ginger is generally the word that people use against you. So redhead is seen as this sort of ethereal being, like kind of otherworldly goddess type. And ginger is seen as like sort of ugly. But I think more and more people are using the word ginger and kind of using it as their badge of honour.
I went through a phase when I was a teenager, when I was 14, of dyeing it black. So that was definitely different.
Got strawberry blonde highlights, or rather they were blonde, but they actually ended up being more gingery because they sort of reacted with the ginger underneath.
And then in my mid-20s I put some of that like the blondie bleachy like sun, I can't remember what it's called sun something, and sprayed some of that on the front, so then it kind of tried to give it a little bit of a blondie fringe look.
I was in a production of Oliver, the musical, and this is a bit controversial actually. So they felt like Oliver in the palette of the rest of the kids who are in that show wouldn't be ginger, or it was too much of a focal point for the guy in the lead role to be ginger.
Then I was about 15 and I went sort of brunette. Tried to get rid of the ginger that way, but I still got the nicknames of ginger, so it was pretty pointless actually.
I already had blonde highlights at that time, and they decided to spray my hair slightly brown. So actually it looked fairly realistic. I sort of had like a reddy, browny, blondie hair colour, which was nothing like myself. So yeah, that was the only time, and I learnt my lesson very young, not to dye my hair again.
I have never dyed my hair, and I never would dye my hair. Cowards, the lot of them, the gingers who dye their hairs. Shame on you, betraying the brotherhood. Hello, I'm Alasdair Beckett-King, and I'm a comedian and animator and a few other things. I'll do anything if you pay me. Yeah, as a child with ginger hair, it was excellent. Other children recognised me as their superior. And no, there was a fair amount of teasing, I think. I don't remember it bothering me a great deal. There was a lot of sort of on-street heckling. In the northeast, where I'm from, the joke was, your hair's on fire, mate, your hair's on fire, which is not a very good joke. But you would think it was based on the frequency. So I would hear that about 8 to 12 times a day from different people, and at a certain point it becomes boring. To be honest, as a kid, what I didn't like was the freckles that come with it, because because it's a sort of genetic quirk for making extra vitamin D, and the skin is the pale skin is the purpose, I suppose. The pale skin is the useful aspect of it, and insane coloured hair is just an incidental side effect. And I didn't like having freckles as a kid, because they're like spots, aren't they? And as a kid, I felt bad about it, and now I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered at all. And I like being visible from afar. But also I'm like 6'3", so I'm like those beacons they light in Lord of the Rings. You know, when they light a series of. I'm one of them. I could have been one of them. When I started to do stand-up comedy, it's useful to be visible in a way. So it's useful to. So for the same reason that when I was 16 and started to grow my hair out, other kids would go like, "Oh, look at him! His hair's on fire." The same eye-catching quality is kind of useful if you're standing on a stage saying, "Hey, I'm the person everybody should be listening to," and trying to sort of back that. You can't really back that up. You've got sort of seconds in which to seem like someone everyone should be listening to, and there's a lot of nasty sides to that, and a lot of sort of audience prejudice and stereotyping, but it doesn't hurt to have a big shock of red hair if you're just appearing in a room in a spotlight.
I think my appearance contributes quite a bit to my identity, I think. But that's ginger hair, that's afro hair, that's being tall and mixed race, all of that sort of combined, I think.
I think looking a bit different as a kid probably had an impact on my identity. I don't know, not fitting in has always been something that I was attracted to as a kid, and I always wanted to sort of stand apart in some way. And obviously, being redheaded we're not an ethnic subgroup, we're not a race. You know, all of the sort of the jokes we make about that aren't true. But we are funny looking.
Now I'm much prouder of it. It's a weird thing to look on your childhood and wish you were prouder of that stuff, when at the time you just wished you had any other hair colour except ginger. Whereas now I sort of regret not loving it more, because my hair is changing colour and going darker, and I'm losing the gingerness, and I look back on childhood photos and it was so much brighter, and I was just like, I want that back. But it's, it happens. You always want grass is always greener, right?
We are noticeable, and we're a tiny fraction of the human population. It's incredibly rare. It's only because if you hang around in sort of northern England and Scotland that it looks like there's lots of redheaded people, because we only live there basically. So it is rare and unusual, and if you're a child with a superiority complex, it's possible to lean into that. So let that be a warning.
I'm proud that I'm ginger and I'm slightly different to the rest of people, and hopefully that means I can leave a bit more of a lasting impression on people, and I quite enjoy that.
Hi, I'm Natasha, and I'm an actress and model, and I live in South London. Growing up with ginger hair, I definitely struggled a little bit during teenage years, I think, with ginger hair. I think because also there's the intersection between having ginger hair but also having afro hair. Today it's a bit straight, but I do alternate between having straight hair and curly hair. But growing up with it quite thick and quite huge and ginger, and also I'm 6 foot tall, so I've always kind of struggled with that a little bit. And I dyed it, I think, because at the time I wasn't sure that I was comfortable with how ginger I was. And that was a thing that I worked through sort of into my 20s, actually. And it was only in my 20s that I was like, whoa, what have I been doing? Stop dyeing it brown, and just accepting how amazing being ginger is. When I was younger, I did want to get into modelling when I was sort of like 19, 20. I'd flirted with the idea, but I think that was, because I'm tall, a lot of people used to go, oh, you should model and all this sort of stuff. And I did go to agencies, but all of them said no. And in hindsight, I'm really thankful for that, because I think at the time I didn't like myself. I don't think it would have been a very good thing for me to have got into at that time. I had darker hair, I had basically like dark brown dyed hair when I was going to those agencies. And yeah, it was the freckles actually where they were like, oof, you got freckles, I don't think so. Back then that was sort of like 2004, 5 time, and that at that point the industry was still very like the beauty standards were quite sort of homogenous. There wasn't really that whole idea of being unique and loving your differences, like that wasn't really happening at that point. And they were like, oh, no one's going to book you. Actually, one agency was like, no one's going to book you because you've got freckles, and that's just going to be annoying for the photographer to airbrush them out. But obviously little me that was like 21 was like, oh, I understand, okay, thanks, bye. No.
People often will get nervous and call me redheaded, but what they mean is to say is that I am ginger, and they should just crack on. And
I personally love the term ginger. It's quite colloquial, I quite like it.
My granddad used copper knob, which I think is the worst possible nickname, but I would like to see it come back at the same time. It is funny enough.
Elliot ginger, ginger ale.
Do you get copper knob? What? No.
Hey red, I quite like that as well.
Let's veto copper knob right now.
In a weird way, it sounds quite contradictory now, but if somebody calls me red, I don't mind that.
Carrot Top has the associations of the prop comedian.
I like the name Ginger.
I don't particularly like Carrot Top because, of course, the tops of carrots are green, so it's confusing.
I find it quite funny, actually. I just laugh at it.
Ginge on its own is quite cool.
I don't mind ginge as well. I call it like Jange sometimes for fun.
I get called Ginge all the time, whether it's in a sporting context or whatever else, and honestly, I'm okay with that. It's a bit, it's fine.
I don't like ginge. I don't particularly care for the inge. I don't like the inge sound. There are a few good words with inge in it.
Because I love and embrace being ginger now, I'm just like, bring it on. Bring on the names. Love it. It makes me laugh.
My name is Elliot, and I am a 28-year-old ginger person. If you look at my family portrait, I'm the only one. And my dad had my colour hair, but he's now grey. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. And I think that's probably where I will potentially go to. But the perception, certainly in like the media world and everything like that, is that, you know, if you are ginger, you probably have come from a family of Weasleys, and that's not true. And that's certainly not my experience, even with the people I know and the people I interact with. I'll tell you one of the most incredible experiences I had was being a part of Redhead Day a couple of years ago. I had never been in a room with so many people who'd possibly had the same experiences as me. And everyone I spoke to, whether it was people older than me, younger than me, or parents who had had redheaded or ginger kids, we all kind of had this unspoken feeling that we all sort of knew what each other person had gone through. And it was actually a very freeing experience because we could all talk about each other's each other's timelines and each other's life experiences, and it felt very freeing. And that was probably almost in a weird way the most vulnerable, that's the most vulnerable I've been.
If you're going through it, it's so hard to listen to somebody who isn't your age telling you that it's okay, you're going to get over it, your hair is awesome, but that is honestly the truth.
I think also having an awareness that if they're bullying you, it's not coming from a good place. Like they might be a bit tormented themselves about, they probably don't like themselves and they're finding a way to lash out. It's very rarely about you, and just to try and love yourself as much as possible.
Bullying doesn't have to be 100%. You don't have to be 100% bullied in order to be feeling bullied, or to go and get help, or to talk to somebody. Even if you've had a certain look, or there's been a comment in class or in the workplace or whatever it is, bullying is not on a scale. So never feel like you're being isolated because you don't feel like you're not being bullied enough.
Looking back on my childhood, if I was able to be less shy and just, when someone said the word ginger to me and use it as a badge of honour and be really proud of it, I feel like that would have helped me get through any sort of bullying that I went through when I was younger. So if you're able to just feel empowered by what you've got and realise as young as possible that you are different, but that is really cool. That's the best thing. It's sort of like you use it against the bullies as something that you feel strong for. And of course, trying to remember that anyone who is bullying somebody, they generally have a lot of issues usually and insecurities themselves. So it's hard to try and empathise with them. But generally, you will look back on it when you're older and you'll wish you were prouder when you were younger, because that would have helped you through it.
I think anyone who is comfortable, ironically, in their own skin or in their own hair colour, they're a legend to me. And no matter what their background is, no matter what they do for a living, honestly, I can, whether I'm looking at somebody or speaking to somebody on a train station platform or whatever it is, honestly, every redhead is a legend to me, and I look up to all of them.
Don't succumb to any of their taunts. Don't feel like you need to dye it. Don't feel like you need to chop it off. It's amazing. Ginger hair is so cool. It's so rare. And it, interestingly, will be the one thing when you get older that you'll appreciate about yourself. Are those things that maybe you get taunted for at the time. But when you're older, you're like, oh yes,